When it comes to the Call of Duty franchise, there's one game that stands out among the others and is what I would consider to be one of the greatest Call of Duty games ever made. That game is none other than Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Released in November of 2012 with the Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii U because, I don't know, why not? Black Ops 1 released on the DS for crying out loud, so might as well slap BO2 on the Wii U as well. The launch of Black Ops 2 was one of the biggest deals in all of gaming as the hype surrounding it was incredibly high, and to say BO2 lived up to the hype would be an understatement. BO2 changed the way people thought about COD forever, and it's when I believe COD really peaked in popularity. COD 4 through MW3 were popular, no doubt, but BO2 is when I feel everything came together for the franchise. BO2 would do a lot to innovate and change up the traditional COD formula that people were used to, which is the biggest reason as to why BO2 is as fun as it is. It innovated in so many ways when it came to the multiplayer and zombies, and on top of that, it had a campaign that topped even Black Ops 1's, which really set the bar pretty high for all COD campaigns going forward. It's just a shame none of them met that bar for a while. With all that out of the way though, I think it's finally time we dive into BO2 and find out what exactly made it so great. Now, I can't make a video on BO2 without first talking about the campaign because I genuinely believe this game is one of the best campaigns when it comes to the Call of Duty series. Now, BO1's campaign was already really damn good, so the fact that they even managed to top it with BO2's campaign was honestly impressive. The story of BO2 does a great job building upon what BO1 already started with its story, and it served as a pretty good conclusion in my opinion. I genuinely believe that the Black Ops games could have ended here with 2 and everything would have been right in the world. But nope, we just had to get BO3, and that game's story didn't even connect to BO2 or 1 for that matter. BO2's story for the most part is set in the year 2025, which meant this was the first Call of Duty to take us to the world of the future, before literally every COD from 2014 to 2016 would do that exact same thing, except worse. The futuristic setting in BO2 works incredibly well though, as it's not so futuristic to the point where it feels nonsensical, so it's able to keep that same classic COD gameplay intact while also slightly changing the gameplay in very small ways. The story follows David Mason, the son of Alex Mason, as him and his team are given the mission of stopping the main antagonist Raul Menendez from launching an attack on America. The campaign begins in the futuristic setting of 2025, where new characters Harper and David Mason are being sent in to question none other than the man himself, Frank Woods, about the whereabouts of Raul Menendez. We then get a flashback to the 80s where Mason is told Woods is MIA and has to go back to the army in order to save him. This then sends us into our first mission where we have the objective of rescuing Woods, assuming he's still alive. So we fight through Angola with Jonas Savimbi, and then we're told what exactly happened to Woods after the events of BO1 and find out that he had survived after taking out Kravchenko. Well, we end up finding Woods barely alive inside of a shipping container and continue to make our way through Angola. Eventually, we run into Raul Menendez for the first time, and this part does a really good job at showing just how menacing and evil Raul Menendez is, and it makes him genuinely feel like a threat. After shooting Menendez, Mason, Hudson, and Woods end up evacuating from Angola after Savimbi comes back to rescue them. The second mission, Solarium, sees us playing as David Mason, where we have to obtain a rare earth element known as Solarium to prevent Menendez from getting his hands on it. After obtaining the Solarium, we then find out that the reason why Menendez is as evil as he is because he feels America took everything from him. They killed his father and his sister, and as a result, Menendez seeks revenge. This then takes us to Afghanistan in 1986, where Woods and Mason are aided by Tian Zhao and the Mujahideen in search for Menendez. This is probably one of my favorite missions in the entire game, as there's nothing more fun than riding around on a horse and gunning down waves of enemies in the middle of a war zone. After fighting off the Russian army, we end up blowing up a tank that belonged to fucking Kravchenko. Woods ends up interrogating Kravchenko to get more information on what Menendez is planning, all while we have to hold back Mason from shooting Kravchenko in cold blood. Holy shit. In the end, Woods ends up killing Kravchenko anyways, but the Mujahideen end up turning on Mason, Woods, and Hudson immediately after because, as it turns out, they were working with Menendez the whole time. At least Reznov came to the rescue though. After we're sent back to the future, we have to defend a power grid in India to prevent Russian forces from gaining control, since Menendez is hoping that Russia, China, India, and Iran will wipe each other other out. This mission essentially plays like an RTS, which sounds cool, but it was really hard to get used to, and thankfully when it came to the main campaign, this is the only time you have to do this, which I'm really happy about because I didn't really like this mission at all. Once that mission's over, we're then sent back to the 80s when Woods and Mason track down Menendez in Nicaragua after learning of his whereabouts from Kravchenko. The mission starts with Manuel Noriega, Hudson, Mason, and Woods successfully locating Menendez in Nicaragua when Noriega gives the signal to the Panama Defense Force to move in on capturing Menendez. We then cut to Menendez showing us what he had become after having been shot by Mason earlier in the campaign. After this, Menendez's sister ends up getting captured by the PDF, and as Menendez, we run through Nicaragua killing anyone and everybody in sight. After running through Nicaragua as Menendez, we find out that it was Woods who had gotten Menendez's sister killed from the result of a grenade blast. The rest of the mission is then played out from the perspective of Mason and ends the exact same way. We're then sent back to 2025 where we have to go to Pakistan in search of someone named DeFalco who's in close relation with Menendez. So after fighting through a flooded Pakistan, we get this kick-ass driving section, and after that is when we meet Tian Zhao once again, this time with him being the leader of China's military, and inform him about Menendez. The next mission sees us heading to the Cayman Islands as David Mason to secure the cyber weapon known as Karma that Menendez has been working on. Only it turns out that Karma wasn't actually a weapon, it was a woman by the name of Chloe Lynch. While attempting to secure Chloe, DeFalco pulls up to Club Solar and ends up capturing her. Now this mission technically has two ways it can end, but the ending I got saw DeFalco escaping with Chloe, which is of course the bad ending. We then get another flashback mission in which we play as Woods when him and Mason are sent to Panama to track Menendez down once again after finding out he had survived in Nicaragua. The mission was to capture Noriega, but as it turns out, the mission would end up turning into a prisoner swap, and this is the mission where the entire game takes a turn. Throughout the campaign, David questions who really killed his father, whether it was Menendez or Noriega, because he never really knew the truth. He knew his father was dead, but he didn't know who killed him. This mission is what finally gives us the long-awaited answer as to what truly happened to Mason. As Woods, we move up to a building to take out the Nexus target, which is believed to be Menendez. After taking the shot, it's revealed that the person you had just killed was actually Mason, and that it was all a part of Noriega's and Menendez's plan. This whole scene of Woods walking up with Noriega to discover Mason dead is still one of the greatest scenes in any Call of Duty ever. Of course, you can let Mason live if you shoot him in the knee, but killing him is the canon ending, and it definitely feels the most impactful. After killing Mason, Menendez ends up killing Hudson as well, and I'd say the death of Mason and Hudson are still to this day the most impactful deaths in the entire franchise. The last few missions see us attempting to stop Menendez from launching an attack on America and China and trying to capture him. The mission Achilles Veil sees us playing as Free, going undercover to attempt to capture Menendez from the inside. Eventually, Menendez ends up shooting an American aircraft out of the sky, and it's here when we're given the choice to either shoot Harper or attempt to kill Menendez. Shooting Menendez results in the death of Fareed, but in the end, Menendez is successfully captured. After capturing Menendez, we interrogate him, only for him to break free of his cuffs, and it's up to us to stop him. Later on in the mission, Menendez takes Admiral Briggs hostage, and we find out that Salazar was working with Menendez, which is how he was able to break free of his cuffs during the interrogation. Salazar later ends up facing the consequences of his actions and is shot dead by Harper, and Menendez successfully escapes. The second to last mission, Cortes Dia, sees us protecting the President of the United States during an attack on the US, and the final mission, fittingly called Judgment Day, we track down Menendez once and for all and finally bring him down. The credits roll, and instead of getting sent straight into zombies like previous CODs did, BO2 instead sends us into a fucking Avenged Sevenfold concert, which is just the coolest thing I've ever seen. Overall, the campaign of BO2 is really damn good, and is probably the most exciting Call of Duty campaign I've ever played. Now that I've talked about the campaign though, I think it's about time I talk about the other modes this game had to offer. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 might just have one of the best multiplayer modes in the entire franchise. The multiplayer in this game was a substantial improvement over Black Ops 1's multiplayer, and it was a ton of fun to play. One of the big reasons multiplayer is so fun in this game is that there's a ton of content. For instance, the modes are incredibly fun whether you're doing free-for-all, search and destroy, or even just your traditional TDM. And if you don't like those modes, BO2 brought back a lot of the modes that were previously only available in wager matches in BO1 and made them their own fully fledged modes. Gun game, Sticks and Stones, One in the Chamber are all perfect and are incredibly fun to play, especially if you have a good amount of friends to play the modes with. Another thing that made BO2's multiplayer as good as it was the map selection, because every map in this game was damn near perfection. This game's iteration of Nuketown is still probably one of my favorite versions of the map. Hijack is absolutely iconic, and don't even get me started on Raid. The maps is something BO2 really got right for its multiplayer, and as a result, there isn't any map that I would say is truly bad and not worth playing on. Outside of the great map selection and modes, there were just so many other things that made this game's multiplayer so damn good. For instance, this was a game that introduced the pick 10 system into Create a Class, which really allowed you to customize and build your weapon the way you wanted it, and while it may have gotten rid of the character customization from BO1, BO2 made up for that by innovating in so many different ways that no other Call of Duty has really been able to do since. This was the game that introduced League Play, which was pretty cool, and the amount of guns that you could pick from in the multiplayer was absolutely insane. And when talking about the multiplayer in this game, you can't forget about the emblem editor, which had an incredible amount of depth to it, allowing you to make some pretty cool looking emblems. Now, I'd show you some of the emblems that people have made over the years, but then the video would look like this, so I'm not gonna do that. Overall, the multiplayer in BO2 is still by far the best multiplayer experience in the entire franchise, but there's still one mode that I feel is even better, so why don't we go ahead and talk about that? Black Ops 2 Zombies is by far my favorite zombies in the entire Black Ops series. When it comes down to it, the biggest reason as to why I love BO2 Zombies so much more or less just boils down to the simplicity of it all. BO2 Zombies is a lot more straightforward than something like BO3, which, don't worry, we'll get to that next week, but that's why I enjoy BO2 Zombies so much. Not to mention, the maps are more wide open and actually give you room to train zombies, maneuver around, and most importantly, survive for longer. Speaking of the maps, BO2 had a grand total of 3 maps on the disc in the form of Farm, Town, and Transit, which was literally just town and farm combined with a few extra small locations thrown in there. Transit is by far my least favorite map because it just feels so boring. Transit is for people who enjoy that feeling of having to turn on the power before you can do literally anything in zombies, like a lot of the maps from previous Call of Duties would have you doing. Not only that, but the whole experience of playing the map is bogged down by this slow ass bus that takes you around everywhere. Ah yes, exactly what I want to do when playing zombies. Ride on a fucking bus. When playing BO2 Zombies, it's definitely best to avoid Transit as the other maps are much better. And by the other maps, I mean just Town. Farm is by far the worst map I've ever played in Zombies. There's a shit ton of fog you can hardly see, and because of that, the only way to enjoy this map is by not playing it. This of course brings us to the best map in the entire mode, Town, and my god what a map it is. First of all, everything is set up in the most straightforward manner possible. There's only 2 spawns for the box, making it easy to follow whenever it lands on the teddy bear, and every perk is incredibly easy to find. I could go on for hours about why Town is the best map in all of Zombies, but for the sake of everyone's sanity, I think I'm gonna stop there. All in all, the Zombies in BO2 was yet another example as to why BO2 was the greatest Call of Duty game of all time. Not only did it have the best multiplayer in any COD ever, but it also had the best zombies mode in the franchise, second to only Black Ops Cold War in my opinion. Now that I've talked about zombies though, I think it's time we get to the conclusion of the video. Overall, Black Ops 2 was and still is an absolute masterpiece of a game. Even if you're not a big fan of Black Ops 2, which if that's the case, are you even real? You have to admit, Black Ops 2 did a lot for the franchise. It made so many innovations and gave people hope that the future of the Call of Duty franchise would be as bright as possibly could be. That just depends on what your definition of bright is.